Have you ever wondered why some people seem to think about sex every waking hour, while others could genuinely go months without giving it a second thought? And both of them are perfectly normal? Why does one person feel like their entire nervous system is on fire while their partner is perfectly content reading a book? Why is there such an enormous variation in something so fundamentally biological? It turns out the answer involves hormones, brain chemistry, genetics, psychology, and a fascinating collection of factors that science has spent decades trying to untangle. This is why sex drives differ, and why yours is exactly what it is. First, a definition: sex drive, or libido, if you want to sound more sophisticated at dinner parties, refers to a person's overall level of sexual desire. Not just how often they want sex, but how intensely they think about it, seek it out, and prioritize it. And the range of what is considered normal is enormous. Studies consistently show that some people think about sex multiple times per hour, while others think about it a few times per week. Some people are content with sex once a month. Others find that genuinely unimaginable. All of these people are within the spectrum of normal human sexuality. The idea that there is one correct level of sexual desire is not supported by biology, psychology, or basically any evidence whatsoever. So what determines where on that spectrum any given person lands? The first and most obvious factor is hormones. Testosterone is the primary driver of sexual desire in both men and women. Yes, women produce testosterone too, just in smaller quantities. Higher testosterone levels are generally associated with higher libido, lower levels with lower libido. Simple, right? Not quite. Because while testosterone clearly plays a role, the relationship between hormone levels and sex drive is far messier than a simple equation. Studies have found that men with clinically normal testosterone levels can have wildly different sex drives. Injecting people with additional testosterone does not reliably increase their libido in a predictable, linear way. The hormone matters, but it is not the whole story, not even close. Estrogen and progesterone also play significant roles, particularly in women. Estrogen generally supports sexual desire and arousal, while progesterone tends to dampen it. This is why many women notice fluctuations in libido throughout their menstrual cycle. Desire often peaks around ovulation, when estrogen is highest, and dips in the days before menstruation, when progesterone dominates. The body, it turns out, has strong opinions about when reproduction is most likely to be successful. It expresses those opinions through your libido, whether you asked for its input or not. Hormones set the stage, but the brain runs the show. Sexual desire originates in the hypothalamus, a small but extraordinarily powerful region of the brain that regulates hunger, thirst, sleep, body temperature, and yes, sexual drive. The hypothalamus responds to hormonal signals and translates them into desire, but it does not operate in isolation. It is constantly in conversation with the limbic system, the emotional brain, and the prefrontal cortex, the rational, decision-making brain. All three are involved in the experience of sexual desire, which is why desire is never purely physical. It is always also emotional and psychological. Dopamine, again, plays a central role. People with naturally higher dopamine sensitivity, whose brains respond more intensely to reward signals, tend to report higher sex drives. People with lower dopamine sensitivity tend to experience desire less intensely and less frequently. This variation is partly genetic. You did not choose your dopamine receptors any more than you chose your height. Serotonin works in the opposite direction. High serotonin levels tend to suppress sexual desire. This is why one of the most common side effects of antidepressants that boost serotonin, SSRIs, is a reduced or absent libido. The medication treats depression by raising serotonin. The serotonin then very efficiently eliminates any interest in sex as a bonus side effect that nobody particularly asked for. It is one of the most frustrating paradoxes in pharmacology and affects an estimated 40 to 65% of people taking SSRIs. Twin studies, the gold standard for separating genetic from environmental influences, have consistently found that libido has a significant hereditary component. Estimates suggest that somewhere between 40 and 60% of the variation in sexual desire between people can be attributed to genetic factors. You inherited your eye colour from your parents. You also, to a meaningful degree, inherited your sex drive. Age is another major factor. Testosterone levels in men peak in the late teens and early 20s and decline gradually thereafter, roughly 1% per year after age 30. This is why the stereotype of the enthusiastic 20-year-old and the less enthusiastic 40-year-old exists, and why it is grounded in actual endocrinology rather than just attitude. Women's libido often follows a more complex pattern. Many women report increased sexual desire in their 30s and 40s before declining in and after menopause, when estrogen levels drop significantly. Stress is one of the most powerful libido suppressants known to science. Cortisol, the stress hormone, directly suppresses testosterone production and dampens the brain's reward response to sexual stimuli. This is evolutionary logic. When the brain perceives threat, reproduction moves down the priority list. Your body is not going to invest in desire when it thinks you might be running from a predator. The predator in 2024 is your email inbox. The cortisol response is the same. Sleep deprivation, poor diet, lack of exercise, chronic illness, relationship quality, body image, trauma history, cultural and religious attitudes towards sex, all of these meaningfully influence libido. Sex drive is not a single dial controlled by a single hormone. It is the output of an extraordinarily complex system with dozens of inputs, all interacting simultaneously. Here is where this becomes practically relevant for a lot of people. One of the most common sources of conflict in long-term relationships is mismatched libido, one partner wanting sex significantly more or less frequently than the other. Research suggests this affects the majority of couples at some point. And here is the important thing science wants you to know about that. A mismatch in sex drive is almost never about attraction, love, or commitment. It is almost always about biology. Two people with genuinely different dopamine sensitivities, different hormone profiles, different stress levels, and different neurological baselines are going to experience desire differently. That is not a relationship failure. It is just two different nervous systems trying to coexist, which requires communication rather than judgment. The person with the lower drive is not broken. The person with the higher drive is not unreasonable. They are just different. And understanding why they are different, really understanding the biology behind it, is probably more useful than any amount of frustration directed at the gap itself. Your sex drive is the product of your hormones, your neurobiology, your genetics, your age, your stress levels, your sleep, your relationship, your mental health, your medication, your history, and approximately 40 other factors all operating simultaneously. It is not a character trait, it is not a moral position. It is a biological output, complex, variable, and entirely your own. Whatever yours is, it almost certainly falls within the enormous, endlessly varied spectrum of normal human sexuality. The only version of libido that requires attention is one that is causing you genuine distress, or that has changed suddenly and significantly without explanation, in which case a doctor, not a YouTube video, is the right next step. For everyone else, you are not too much. You are not too little. You are just human. Thanks for watching and for being curious enough to actually learn something today. Hit the like button, subscribe to Capsule, and we will see you in the next one.